We are doing Extra Life again this year, where you can mash buttons, roll dice, play games, and help kids along the way. I hope you'll be a part of that with us. Stick around after the video for more information. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We've got a ton going on here at Spirit Blade Productions and Christian Geek Central, including our in-depth Bible study for geeks, movie, game, and other entertainment reviews or commentary, live streams, Christian geek news, original audio dramas, and tons more. And on top of all that, you can become a Spirit Blade insider with an influential voice and get access to exclusive content and rewards. It's your involvement as a patron that will keep all of this going and growing, so I want to thank you for your consideration in that. For more information, please check out our Patreon page through the link below at patreon.com/spiritbladeproductions. Thanks for listening. Alright, well, my editing skills are crap. But can the same thing be said about The Predator? Stick around and find out. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with my uncut review of The Predator, which is not a reboot of the franchise, but a sequel, still in continuity, although they don't really reference previous movies, just the fact that, yep, these aliens have been doing stuff on our planet, before. The synopsis on IMDb, written by 20th Century Fox, reads, "From the outer reaches of space to the small town streets of suburbia, the hunt comes home. Now the universe's most lethal hunters are stronger, smarter, and deadlier than ever before, having genetically upgraded themselves with DNA from other species. When a young boy accidentally triggers their return to Earth, only a ragtag crew of ex-soldiers and a disgruntled science teacher can prevent the end of the human race." That's an interesting note, disgruntled science teacher. I'm not sure if I remember that facet of her character at all. Maybe they briefly touched on it, but I mean, it was not... Character was not like a strong concern. Developing character was not a strong concern in this movie. Let's talk about the story, script, pacing, tone, that sort of thing. This is a sci-fi action movie through and through, with also frequent comedic elements, usually resulting from this ragtag group of ex-soldiers called the Loonies, who are all going off to like a military prison or something like that because they've all done bad things as a result of psychological breaks that they've had. And so you've got this colorful cast of soldiers, that are usually going for comedy in their scenes. This is a gory, violent movie, but I wouldn't describe it as scary. Again, sci-fi action with frequent comedic elements. It's psychologically unrealistic. They're not going for a very serious, grounded psychological tone. I'm gonna be critical of that aspect of the movie and kind of the tone of it because it's not my thing, but I have to give credit to the creators. I can see how this could be a legitimate reinterpretation of the original Predator movie. If you think about the original Predator movie, it also had a cast of kind of unusual soldiers that were kind of over the top in their characterization. Even going back a few years ago and watching the original Predator movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, which I did as a part of it to get ready for a discussion that I had on the Retro Rewind podcast, episode 96, if you want to check that out. I was kind of like taken aback at Schwarzenegger in that movie. I was like, oh, I'm not feeling it. It's just, I guess, too much time has passed for me to feel nostalgic and kind of accept Schwarzenegger and his brand. In this particular role, I still think he works for me as the Terminator, but in this role, I was like, yeah, no, that's not working for me. So it's not that I'm holding up or have like rose-colored lenses for the original Predator movie. It doesn't hold up for me and feel like I would like it to feel today. And I think that this movie is in many ways kind of translating that vibe of like, colorful cast of tough guy characters, but adding the splash of what I would call Marvel humor, which really has become popular that Marvel has popularized and has found its way into all kinds of action and action sci-fi movies now. So I think this is today's version of this kind of movie, But anyway, My usual complaints for that kind of movie with that kind of tone is that it's psychologically unrealistic. In this case, people seem shocked and stressed at most by out of this world events that they're exposed to, but not genuinely freaked the crap out like I really would want them to be, which I think would help me feel just the intensity of, oh my gosh, what is this creature? And, and feeling the fear along with them. I felt more fear and dread coming from the Marines in the original Schwarzenegger movie than I felt coming off of any of the characters in this movie. The character introductions for the quote-unquote loonies kind of display their quirks and their caricatures that are playing out consistently through the rest of the movie. So there's characterization in that sense, but it's really mostly for humor. Characterization for drama or for emotional investment is nearly absent, even though there was great opportunity for it, because the lead sniper Marine, who actually has his head screwed on straight, but people just think he's crazy because he had a run-in with the Predator at the beginning. He's got a neglected wife and son who live at home, and who are very, very much a part of the story as well. And they could have used that to ground this with a little bit of relatable family drama and relationships to make me feel a little bit more like, man, I hope he survives so that he can go home to his wife and son. I could tell that they were trying to kind of play with the father-son dynamic and use that to bring a little bit of emotional connection maybe, but it was barely there and certainly not working to connect me to the characters in the drama. It's heavily action-oriented. The pace rarely lets up, and yet I didn't feel more intense as I watched it because of its lack of slower moments. I think actually if they would have taken some time to play up the character, the emotional connections between characters more, I would have been more invested in whether or not certain characters live or die. Some key elements of the story also made little sense to me or were just too convenient. I'm not going to talk about more than two of them because I don't want to really spoil the story. There's a predator dog, which you've probably seen if you've watched the trailer. So yes, this movie has predator dogs, and this dog gets shot in the head and then becomes an ally of the humans after this because his brain gets messed up or something. It felt very convenient, and I don't know. And there's a child in this movie that is really empowered in some ways that I can see, being like, maybe bringing awareness to Asperger's as a condition, and kind of talking about maybe some of the positives that can result, that there are certainly some aptitudes that are increased in among those who have Asperger's. I don't think that's always the case, but anyway, I can see that they were in a respectful way, trying to kind of do some things there with that concept, but it still resulted in what felt like child empowerment from a children's movie. They didn't quite lean heavily enough into what I would call the realism of that condition, and yeah, so anyway, I'm not going to talk about that anymore. The second thing that I noticed, and this was very brief, but I did take note, is that the premise of this story we see in one scene, mentioned very briefly, but if you think about it, it's like, oh, that's like the whole premise of the movie hangs on this one idea, and that is, the movie leans on the assumption that climate change will make our world impossible to live on within 1 or 2 generations from right now. So I'm like, okay, yes, we need to be good stewards of creation. I think that there's indications of that in Scripture. But let's dial back the extreme left sentiment that we're going to wipe out all life on the planet through pollution in the next generation or two. They continue to expand on the lore of the Predator in this movie by introducing 2 new types of predators, one being the dog. They also provide subtitles so the audience knows what the predators are saying. The entire philosophy of hiding the monster and progressively revealing it that guided the first film and arguably a good chunk of the second film, that seemed completely absent here, and that's like a significant hook for me in any kind of monster movie, creature feature, whatever, is like wondering, having fear of the unknown, like, oh, I barely saw it. What is that? Did I see what I think I saw? What is this weird creature? And it's slowly revealed over time. And that's what makes, I think, monster movies hard to keep going as part of a franchise. I think it's one of the reasons why the Aliens movies felt like, well, we've got to just go in a different direction, because we've revealed the monster. By the end of the second movie in that franchise, they've kind of revealed about all they can. Then they started like doing like a hybridization of it in the third movie, and then all kinds of crazy genetic stuff in the fourth movie. So you can see that struggle happening in other monster movies like this. And sometimes it can work. In the case of the Aliens movies, I think that the third one, the director's cut anyway, the extended cut, works for me just because the rest of the movie was doing some things that I liked. It wasn't that the creature was especially fascinating to me. There was some other things in the setting and the characters and stuff like that that I was really engaged in. And that was not the case for me here, and I wasn't particularly interested in what they were introducing to the lore of the Predator. And also, like, the Predators and their ships in this movie are all very well lit from the very beginning, and so details are clearly visible. There's just no attempt to obscure the Predators and mystify them in any way. So that was a bummer to not feel like any mystery about these creatures anymore. They also clearly set up a sequel, no spoilers, it looks like is going to have a bunch of shark jumping, and shark jumping, we usually mean that in a negative connotation. I want to allow for the possibility that I will enjoy the next movie. I don't know, because sometimes you can take a risk and you can jump that shark. In other words, just do something outlandish that the series is not known for, take it in a totally new direction, and a lot of times that fails. But sometimes when you jump that shark, you can land in new territory that actually ends up being interesting and compelling in some way. So I want to allow for that possibility, but right now I don't have high hopes. My impressions is that the vibe of the next movie might evolve into something that has like a sci-fi superhero vibe to it, akin to Iron Man. I'm just like, oh, okay, we'll see. This series of movies, I think, was built on the concept that Predators want to take on the best of the best in combat to the death. This movie changes that so that the Predators now just want genetic samples of the best to take back to their laboratories and monkey with. That is not as interesting to me. My preference would have been a serious movie set in, say, the Middle East, where the Predator, maybe even a rebooted Predator, as part of a rebooted Predator franchise that has a new, at least significantly modified visual design and maybe some different abilities instead of the ones we're used to him having. I don't know, but serious Middle East, drops down in the middle of a conflict between Marines and terrorists. I would be interested in seeing that movie. It looks like they didn't want to go that direction and probably don't plan to in the future. But as far as the cast goes, the actors playing the loonies were all very interesting to me. I didn't laugh near as often as they were clearly, trying to be funny, but that is just a curse of mine. I tend to not find funny what many other people find funny in movies, but I at least found the performances varied and interesting, so I did appreciate that. Other than that, everyone else stood where they were supposed to stand. They said their lines when they were supposed to, with the proper facial expressions. Solid stuff. No negative performances that, in the sense that they were distracting to me or like took me out of whatever of the experience. So no complaints, but I wouldn't pass around any awards either. As far as the stunts and visuals go, the new Predators are entirely CG, so I was bummed because I'm cursed with an eye that picks out CG, and it already kind of looks kind of fake to me, even like the top of the line CG, except in rare cases. And so for me, this experience was like looking at a bunch of very highly detailed cartoons when these new Predators would come on screen, so that was disappointing. Plenty of explosions and all kinds of sci-fi effects and Predator tech and stuff like that, so that I guess was cool, but since I wasn't feeling the intensity of the action sequences, it was all just a light show to me. And personally, I need intensity and drama attached. I want to be emotionally invested so that all that spectacle has impact to me as a viewer. I don't usually comment on the music and sound, but I'll briefly say that from the start, the music is not only reusing the 80s Predator theme, but in other ways, it is evoking film scores, I think, of the 1980s. It almost sounded like Star Wars at the beginning of the movie, even down to, like, after the main theme, and then it zooms in and the music gets quiet. Oh, is like this little teeny strings or something like that. You know, it even did that at the beginning. I was like, this is really interesting, and felt really too bright and kind of adventurous to me. Yeah, very, very interesting. As far as like, are there any worthwhile themes that stuck out to me that might bring about worthwhile thoughts or potential for conversation to my mind? Nothing really stood out to me in this movie. One of the loonies was some kind of Bible believer, and he was convinced that the end times were coming any day, and that the predators now showing up were a sign of that. He's mocked at least 2 or 3 times for his Bible talk, and he also adds an S at the end of the title of the last book of the Bible, Revelation, which is a little pet peeve of mine. But anyway, at least he wasn't acting superior and judgmental toward the other characters, and clearly seemed designed to be likable for the audience. I just thought it was interesting that the weirdness or the quirk of this character is significantly attached to his belief in the Bible. Otherwise, the movie doesn't seem to be saying much of anything in an intentional way, except maybe that brief implicit warning to recycle kids or the world is doomed in 80 years. I have no idea what your tastes are in movies, but if I were a time traveler, I would go back in time and say, Peter, hey, skip it. I mean, you sensed as much when you watched the trailer that there was going to be some things in this movie that just weren't going to be your cup of tea. I know, you're wanting to give it a try and really go in with an open mind, but just skip it. You're going to be disappointed. You love this creature. You own Predator 1 and 2, and the first Aliens versus Predator movie anyway. You didn't like the second one. Those movies are enough for you, okay? And even they themselves even lack in some qualities that you would prefer they had. This one, far more so. So wait for a reboot that surrounds this fascinating movie creature with a more serious, engaging story and characters, or wait and see if maybe enough interest gets drummed up to result in a video game you'd like. You don't play those for story anyway, and maybe you'd get to engage with the concept of the Predator without having a story surrounding it that falls flat for you. Alright, it's rated R for strong, bloody violence, language throughout, and crude sexual references. Those are my thoughts. I'd love to get yours in the comments below. Please like, share, subscribe, and click that notification bell. This content is part of the Christian Geek Central podcast, which you can find on iTunes and other podcatchers, or over at christiangeekcentral.com. We've launched a Patreon also for Christian Geek Central. Go check out patreon.com/Spiritblade Productions for info on the rewards you can get for supporting this work as we continue, I don't have the button ready, to geek out and seek the truth. November 3rd, Dragon Quest XI and Spider-Man for PS4 are coming out within 3 days of each other. I'm going to try and review both games. I don't have time to make a brand new Extra Life recruitment bumper. November 3rd. Once again this year, Christian Geek Central is participating in Extra Life. This is a charity that raises funds for the Children's Miracle Network of Hospitals, which provides free medical care to children whose families could otherwise not afford it. And this is very often for critical, life-saving treatment. Joining our team only requires a willingness to ask your family and friends to consider donating toward your fundraising efforts. Participants also usually do something fun and game-related to draw attention to their fundraising efforts, like a special game night at your home or your church. Or like me, you could do a crazy 24-hour video gaming marathon. Now, I'm theming it around video games, but really this event can be themed around any kind of gaming, which includes both video games and tabletop games of any kind. What you do to raise funds is entirely up to you, but I would love for you to consider joining the Christian Geek Central Extra Life team. As team leader, I'll be there to help answer your questions, provide some helpful tips if I can, and just in general be your fundraising cheerleader and try to draw attention myself to your fundraising efforts. You can get more information about the event as a whole at extra-life.org, and if you choose to sign up there, be sure to select Christian Geek Central as your team so I can get in touch with you and then just help in whatever way I can. Fundraising can begin at any time, but our main push is going to be through the month of October leading up to November 3rd. That's the annual Extra Life Game Day, when I'll be streaming my 24-hour video gaming marathon live and trying to stay awake without throwing up. More details on my live stream as we get closer to it. That's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.